time of day. 'Cause I ain't been doing nothing but drinking and thinking, oh, since you've been away.
DJ Payne 1.
Oh, come on.
I don't think that I'm coming back. Boy, I told you I'm done with that. You think you can do me so wrong. I'm not the one, no, I'm not the
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CEO Sports Show for August 4th, 2025. I want to just say thank you so much for tuning into the show. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about Micah Parsons and the Cowboys situation. It is a ridiculous situation, to say the least, but we will be getting into all of that. We're also going to be talking about who I believe the favorites in the AFC are. On top of the fact that I saw a list of top coaches in the NFL, and I just have to say something about it because I just thought that it was such a bad list that this could not go unnoticed. So if you guys don't know, so we started a media page. It's Kretschman Media. My name is Kris Kretschman, by the way. I am the host of the CEO Sports Show. And pretty much what's going on here is the CEO Sports Show is going to be live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7:30. And then we're also going to be going live during the football season, after the college football games on Saturday, and then after the Sunday night games. We're going to be going live with Ben Garcia from the Mic Drop, which is also a Kretschman Media page. So I do appreciate, all the support we've received for the page so far. So, appreciate it. I want to start talking about sports, to be honest with you. So let's get into that. I want to start off by talking about the Cowboys and the Micah Parsons situation. The Cowboys are not trading Micah Parsons. I just don't think that's going to happen. It's not happening. Jerry Jones even came out and said, Cowboys fans, do not lose sleep over this trade request. And here's the thing. I do have to hold Micah Parsons accountable for something because I actually don't think that he's done a good enough job during this negotiation period with taking advantage of the leverage that he has. So he requested a trade the other day, but after he requested a trade, the very next day he was at practice. If he was trying to make it so that it looks like it was serious that he was actually requesting a trade, he should have left Dallas. He never should have showed up to practice. And yeah, so far, if he were to miss training camp, he would incur $50,000 fines per practice. But once the negotiation is over and they agree to a deal, all of that stuff is going to get reimbursed to him anyway. So he's not taking advantage of the leverage that he has. And that trade request, I just don't think has been taken seriously by the Jones family. I think that Micah Parsons wants to be a Cowboy. The Jones family wants Micah Parsons to be a Cowboy. And I think that this is all just negotiation tactics from both sides. But I will say this, there is real tension between both the Cowboys and Micah Parsons. And the reason why I say that is because there was a deal that was negotiated between Micah Parsons and Jerry Jones back there in March during a meeting that was supposed to be for leadership about Micah Parsons, that he needs to be more of a leader. Now, this is another thing that I have to hold Micah Parsons accountable for. Once he heard anything about negotiations, he should have stopped the meeting right there and said, hey, we're not negotiating without my agent in this room. If you want to start talking about contracts and numbers and anything of the such, you have to make sure that my agent is in the room, or we're not talking about numbers. So that is something that I do want to hold Micah Parsons accountable for there. But we know how this is going to end. The Cowboys are going to end up signing Micah Parsons to the biggest contract that a defensive player has ever seen. And it's going to happen probably in about 2 to 4 weeks from now. And come September 4th in Philadelphia, Micah Parsons will be in a Cowboys uniform playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. That's what this is leading to. And this is all the game that the Jones family plays. Every single year, it feels like there's a contract negotiation with the Cowboys. In 2023, it was Zach Martin. In 2024, it was CeeDee Lamb. The Dak Prescott contract negotiations, they weren't as tumultuous as the CeeDee Lamb one and the Micah Parsons one, because Dak Prescott did show up to camp. So yeah, it was a big storyline, and it definitely did, dominate the headlines here. But we all know where this is going. Where this is going is Micah Parsons is going to get signed to a big contract, and the Jones family is okay with signing him to that contract, because over these past few weeks here, every show has been dominated by the Cowboys. First Take, The Herd, Get Up, all these shows are talking about the Cowboys. They are making money from the fact that people are talking about them and saying a lot of things in the media about this team. That's what's happening there. And this is the playbook that they're going to continue to go with when it comes to negotiations, because at the end of the day, they're fine with it because people are talking about them. They're making more money. And at the end of the day, the Cowboys are going to remain in the headlines. They are the number one brand in sports. And Jerry Jones knows that. And he understands that ultimately that's going to be the headline there. It's going to be Micah Parsons and the Cowboys agree to a massive contract extension, and both sides are going to walk away. Like after the contract negotiation, Micah Parsons is going to have the deal, and both sides are going to live happily ever after. And Micah Parsons will continue to be, a Dallas Cowboy. And I do want to go over one thing when it comes to Micah Parsons and how valuable he is to the Dallas Cowboys. Bill Barnwell came out with a tweet. Over the last 4 years, the Cowboys are the league's best defense with Micah Parsons on the field by EPA per play. Across 1,039 play sample, they're the league's second worst defense over the same stretch by EPA per play when Parsons isn't on the field. You can make a case that Parsons is the most valuable defender in football. Did you know that the Cowboys last year were top 3 in the league in sacks? Who did they have outside of Micah Parsons that you look at as a premier pass rusher? They didn't have anybody outside of Micah Parsons as a premier pass rusher. Because of the way offensive lines shift protections towards Micah Parsons, if you have a creative defensive coordinator who can complement the fact that you have an elite edge rusher in Parsons, and they can come up with blitz packages off of that, you're going to be able to have a very effective pass rush. And obviously, we saw that the Cowboys were able to do that. And, I think Micah Parsons as a run defender has actually improved big time over the course of his career. And, look, if the Cowboys want to contend this year and want to make a run here, they're going to need Micah Parsons on the field for them and suited up. And I think that's ultimately what's going to happen. So, we got that covered. We got the Micah Parsons situation covered. By the way, I will have RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys on the page tomorrow. He is a good friend of mine. He will be on the page. We will be talking about all things Cowboys when it comes to, the Micah Parsons contract, expectations for them for the season. And I think Dak Prescott's going to have a big year this year, and we're going to go over that with RJ. But second thing I want to talk about is the AFC favorites. So every year when it comes to the AFC, I hear the Bills are going to make it to the Super Bowl this year. The Ravens are going to make it to the Super Bowl this year. The only team that I'll even hear out, even though they haven't been in the playoffs in 2 years, is the Bengals, because they've proven that they can beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. But I'm tired of hearing about the Ravens and the Bills when it comes to them being AFC favorites, when every single year, whenever they have to play the Kansas City Chiefs, who, by the way, I think are the AFC favorites, what happens? They lose every time. So I guess I'm spoiling it here. I believe that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the AFC this year. When you look at this Chiefs roster, they have a very good receiver room. When you talk about Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, Jalen Royals, this rookie that they have, I am very high on that kid. So they have a wide receiver room that I think is one of the 10 best in football. They have a defense that I think, no doubt about it, is a top 10 defense, if not top 5, right? They have Chris Jones, who you can say outside of Dexter Lawrence is the best defensive tackle in the league. They have a really good linebacker room with Leo Chenal, who's one of the best linebackers in football, Drew Tranquil, Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie on the boundary, George Karlaftis rushing the passer. They have Steve Spagnuolo as their defensive coordinator. Now, understand this. I'm talking about their receiver room. I didn't even talk about their offensive line that I think is going to be one of the premier units in football this year, because they have two guys on the interior with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, who you can make a case are the best players at their position. And they have Josh Simmons from Ohio State that they drafted, who I believe was the best offensive tackle in the draft this past year. I believe he was better than Will Campbell. That's how high I was on Josh Simmons. The reason why he fell to the Kansas City Chiefs was because the injury he sustained, some maturity questions about him. But I think that kid is going to be a great player in the NFL. But understand this. So I talked about the roster. I talked about the offensive line, the receiver room. I talked about the defense, Steve Spagnuolo. And by the way, that defense, even though Chris Jones is getting older, a majority of that defense is starting to enter the prime of their career. This might be the best Kansas City Chiefs defense that they've had in this 5-year window that they've had. I didn't even bring up the fact that they have a top 5 quarterback of all time in the prime of his career and a top 5 head coach of all time. When will people understand that the difference between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens is that all of the margins that you win on in the NFL, they win on every margin. All of the small details that you win on in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs win on. They are so detail-oriented because they have a top 5 head coach of all time. They have arguably the best defensive coordinator in football. I don't even think it's a conversation, to be honest with you. He is the best defensive coordinator in football. They have the best offensive play caller and the best defensive play caller. And they have a top 5 quarterback of all time in the prime of his career. When you have guys in those positions that are as good as those guys are, you're going to win a lot of games. And I think that the reason why I'll even go this far, I think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl this year. And it's because of those 3 guys. And the reason why is because I think that the Philadelphia Eagles are a really damn good football team, a great football team. But the reason why I feel better about the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl than I do the Eagles is because when you look at the Eagles roster, they're more dependent on the pieces outside of the quarterback and the coach, right? So I don't think the Eagles roster is as talented as it was last year. I don't even think that's a hot take. They're not. They're not as talented. So when you look at the foundation of the Chiefs, it is Mahomes, Reed, and Spagnuolo. And then they have a good roster around those guys. With the Eagles, they have a great roster around good foundational pieces with Hurts and Sirianni and Vic Fangio, who I think is the second best defensive coordinator in the game. So going back to the Chiefs here, the reason why I just don't feel good picking the Bills or the Ravens over the Chiefs is just because we have not seen them get the job done when they need to get the job done against the Kansas City Chiefs. And understand this, Kansas City Chiefs won 15 games last year and got to a Super Bowl. I don't think that roster was a 15-win roster. I don't. When you look at the talent on paper, that is not a 15-win team. But the reason why the Kansas City Chiefs got to the Super Bowl is because of the three guys that I mentioned, Mahomes, Reed, Spagnuolo. They elevate the talent around them, and they make everybody around them better because of their presence, because they're so damn good at what they do. And because of that, that's why I think they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, and I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year because I think that they are an even better roster than they were last year. And I think a lot of that is going to have to do with, I think this offensive line, when you look at Simmons, they're going to need Sua Mataia kicking in there at left guard. They're going to need him to play good football. But man, if he plays good football, this is going to be one of the premier units in the entire league. I think they have the potential to be a top 5 unit in football. And if that's the case with that receiver room, with that quarterback, with that play caller, with that defense, I think that's ultimately the reason why I think they're going to get the job done this year. And the Kansas and Patrick Mahomes is going to get his 4th Super Bowl. So talked about the Kansas City Chiefs and why I think they are the favorites in the AFC. I want to move on to the San Francisco 49ers, the team that the Kansas City Chiefs played in the Super Bowl last year. I saw a head coaching list that, I'm not going to lie, I wanted to throw my phone through the window. They had CBS ranked all of the head coaches in the NFL. They had Kyle Shanahan ranked as the 7th best head coach in football. I find that absolutely blasphemous. Even if you want to just say, okay, we're ranking them based off what they did last season, I think that that's a really bad way to rank coaches. Like, fine, if that's your rationale, okay, but I think that that's a horrible way to rank coaches. To me, Kyle Shanahan is a top 3 head coach in football. You got Reed, you have McVay, and then you have Shanahan. And then we could start talking about other people. You could start talking about Sirianni, Dan Campbell. Me personally, my top 5 head coaches are Reed, McVay, Shanahan, Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur. I think those guys elevate the talent on their roster more than any other coach. But I'm willing to hear out Dan Campbell, Nick Sirianni, those guys. But when you look at this list, you have Andy Reid at 1, McVay at 2, John Harbaugh at 3, Nick Sirianni at 4, Dan Campbell at 5, Jim Harbaugh at 6, and then Kyle Shanahan at 7. There is no case to be made that Jim and John Harbaugh are better coaches than Kyle Shanahan. There's no case to be made that Dan Campbell is a better head coach than Kyle Shanahan. I personally don't agree with the case that Nick Sirianni is better than Kyle Shanahan, but at least he is the coach of the team that just won the Super Bowl, so I can hear that out. But this is what we do in sports. When it comes to Kyle Shanahan, he is the perfect example of sports discourse that I just can't stand. We talk about what a guy hasn't done instead of what the guy has done. Because when you look at what Kyle Shanahan has done, I think you make a better case for him being a great coach than the people who say he's not a great coach because of what he didn't do. Kyle Shanahan got to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo. He got to a conference championship with Jimmy Garoppolo, where, by the way, they beat Dallas in Dallas. They beat Green Bay in Green Bay, where Rodgers had one of the best seasons of his entire career, and the Green Bay Packers looked like the clear favorites to come out of the NFC that year. And then they go into LA, and they should have won that football game. They absolutely should have won that football game. And if they win that football game with the way they play football, I think they would have beat the Bengals that year. But he got to a conference championship and almost won a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo as his quarterback. He then gets Brock Purdy, and they get to a conference championship, and then they get to a Super Bowl. Understand this. I don't believe that Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. Now, I think Brock Purdy is significantly better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but I think that there is a great case to be made that Kyle Shanahan absolutely elevates the level of play from both of those quarterbacks. And when you look at John Harbaugh at 3, John Harbaugh has one of the most talented quarterbacks the NFL has ever seen and can't get to a Super Bowl with him. Got to one conference championship with him, and the opposing team in that divisional game that they won to get to the conference championship, they scored 3 points in that game. Kyle Shanahan is one of the greatest play callers of the 21st century. That's how good of a play caller this guy is. And I just think that when you look at Kyle Shanahan as a coach, there's no doubt about it. He's a top 3 coach in the NFL. And it's funny, when you look at 2 of the most disrespected people in football when it comes to Justin Herbert and Kyle Shanahan, you can make a case that if Justin Herbert was Kyle Shanahan's quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, they would probably have won 2 Super Bowls, because I think they would have won in 2022 because they would have beat the Rams that year. They probably wouldn't even have went to LA because they probably would have won the division that year if Justin Herbert was their quarterback, especially with the way Justin Herbert played in that season. Absolutely. And they probably would have won in 2024 if Justin Herbert was the quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. And the case that like, oh, well, he's getting paid big money, so you wouldn't be able to put pieces around him. He wasn't getting paid big money in those years, right? So those to me are 2 examples of guys that we talk about what they haven't done compared to what they have done. And what they have done is some very impressive stuff, which is why I just believe that Kyle Shanahan ultimately is at least a top 5 coach. I'm not hearing any case that Dan Campbell, John Harbaugh, and Jim Harbaugh are better than Kyle Shanahan. I'm just not hearing it. And I think that this year, we'll see from the San Francisco 49ers what they do this year. They have an easy schedule this year. They are coming off a down season in their perspective, like when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers. But I have no doubt in my mind that, they're going to be a team that's going to be one of the better teams in the NFC. And it's going to be in large part because of what Kyle Shanahan is going to do for this offense. And I think when you look at the NFC right now, I can really only say that there's one team that is like definitively better than the San Francisco 49ers, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think you could definitively say that the Lions, the Vikings, or any of these other top teams, the Buccaneers, the Packers. I don't think you could definitively say that they're better than the San Francisco 49ers. I don't think you could say that at all. When you look at the San Francisco 49ers, they still have a very good defense. They have a quarterback that under Kyle Shanahan can play at an extremely high level. They still have McCaffrey. They have George Kittle. Ayuk's coming back from that ACL injury. We'll see what happens there. Ricky Pearsall is another guy that I'm hearing some really good things about. So ultimately, when you look at the San Francisco 49ers roster, I think that they're still one of the better rosters in the NFC. And I think in large part, they're going to be a very solid team this year because of the fact that they have a pretty good roster and they have an elite head coach. And I think Kyle Shanahan is chomping at the bits to show people why he's one of the best head coaches in football. But the moral of the story when it comes to Kyle Shanahan is this: he elevates the talent of the football teams that he has coached. Ever since he's gotten to the San Francisco 49ers, they've been to the Super Bowl twice, they've been to the conference championship twice, and they have not had elite quarterbacks. And they're still able to get over that hump. And yeah, they haven't won a Super Bowl yet. Kyle Shanahan has not won a Super Bowl. But I would also say this, he gets a lot of slack for what happened in that Atlanta Falcons game, the 28-3 game. But I would also say Matt Ryan had the best season of his career by far with Kyle Shanahan, and he never reached that level of play under any other coordinator. So I don't think he gets enough credit for that. But at the end of the day, we have to start giving credit to people in sports that, yeah, they might not have gotten the ultimate job done, but they still got very far into the process. And that to me is just where I start to divert and say, no, it's not fair to criticize somebody for, not getting the ultimate job done and not giving them credit for what they did leading up to that. So that is going to be it for the show today. I want to thank you guys for coming out and supporting the show. If you guys haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. So we are going to be going live every single day this week from Tuesday to Friday. And look out for the clips. We're going to be clipping all this up into short form content, medium form content that you guys can, you guys can go and support. I would greatly appreciate that. But that's going to be it for the first episode, though, guys. I appreciate you guys for coming out, and I will see you guys in the next episode.